Welcome to Morrison Madness. This is part 2 of turning jobs into hobbies, or as I like to call them, jobbies.
Hobbies into jobs, not jobs into hobbies. Hobbies into jobs.
Yeah, reverse versa. Yes, hobbies into jobs. Sorry.
So then they become jobbies.
Yes.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Right. Yes.
Because I still enjoy them, but I'm getting paid.
Hopefully, yes.
It's not a job if you're not getting paid.
Oh, is that what it is?
It might be work, but it's not a job. Marriages are work. They're not a job.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Okay. So, on the last episode, we finished up with talking about turning D&D and Magic the Gathering into a game store.
Right.
And you have...
Yeah. So, I feel like, in that sense, my job at Honors was actually originally a hobby. So, when I went to undergrad, I got involved in co-curricular planning for the residence halls. I ended up becoming an RA, which is a job primarily because I enjoyed doing the programming. I enjoyed creating that community and things that way. And then when I finished my master's program, I started looking for...
I wouldn't say that's a hobby, though, because you had ulterior motives for doing it.
Originally, I did not.
So you became an RA, and they didn't tell you until 2 months later that you were going to...
No. You're misunderstanding. I had originally went to college. I became the educational programmer for Mayflower Hall, which was a hobby. It's an organization. It's volunteer.
Oh, I misunderstood. You're right.
So I did volunteer programming through a residence hall organization where you're just volunteering to be on the board to make that residence hall a better place to live type idea. And there's no payment involved. And then a friend of mine was like, if you really enjoy doing this stuff, you should look at becoming an RA because you just do that for a floor instead of for a whole building. And you're really good at doing it for a whole building. You'd be awesome at doing it for a floor.
Because generally a hobby is something that you put more money into than you get out of.
Well, right. And if time is money, I put a lot of time into it.
Yeah, well, some people say time is money.
And so then the RA job was kind of a first step into that. But then I got to thinking... even though I graduated with a master's in epidemiology, I started looking at jobs and didn't like any of the jobs that I was qualified with my master's. And I happened across the job in Honors.
You didn't want to correlate data about coronaviruses?
No.
And project?
At that time, I think it was West Nile virus was the big one. But no, it wasn't something...
Make projections on
No, I didn't...
outbreaks?
No, I didn't enjoy that.
Doesn't sound like fun to me either. Especially not after seeing the movie Outbreak.
Anyway, and so then I happened across seeing the position at Honors, and it was activities. It wasn't called activities director. It was coordinator of student programs. But the way the job read, it was like being a hall, educational programmer for a hall or for an RA. It was all that programming side of stuff. And I thought, I can get paid to do this as an adult? That's awesome. And I applied for the job.
As an adult.
Well, at that point, I mean, I had my master's degree. I mean, I was in my
So you thought you were adulting?
Mid-20s.
Yeah, well.
Mid-20s is semi-adulting.
Good, yeah.
So.
Really? I'm 52. I barely adult.
You don't adult.
Sometimes I do.
No, you think you do,
okay.
But you don't.
All right. My mom said I could.
But in any case, so then I started working for Honors, and I would say that was a dream job. The same way that you were for the pet store. I went to work when I probably shouldn't have. I remember I had vertigo so bad that I could barely walk, and I still went in to my job. When I broke my nose, I tried to go in. You wouldn't let me.
Yeah, that's true.
I really enjoyed that job. I'm sad that I had to leave, but it was a lot of fun, and I enjoyed working with the students and helping the students grow and develop and understand more about the world and all that kind of stuff as well. But it comes from originally doing that educational programming when I first went to the university and getting involved in the residence hall associations. Otherwise, I wouldn't have even known that kind of stuff existed. I wasn't a party planner. Right. You know, I remember when I started working for Honors and people would ask, what kind of training did you have? Like, I had people come and interview me that were trying to decide on careers, and they wanted to know what path I took to get that job. And I was like, I don't have an education in this. I didn't learn to do this. This was just something that I enjoyed, and I evidently did it well, and that's why I'm here. But it was definitely, you know, I remember talking to my mom, and she was a room mother when I was in grade school, and so she would plan the parties and that kind of stuff, and that was fun for her. She enjoyed it, and I don't know if that's kind of where that comes from, that I just really enjoy doing that kind of stuff. But so then that event planning from early on, building into RA, building into honors, and now building into our company that we have. Right.
Which I started as a hobby.
You started as a hobby. I started as a hobby. I had
the largest cassette collection, and 45 collection, and the loudest, nicest stereo.
In your high school.
Yep, and I would bring mine in, and I started DJing dances. I did it for free, and then people at dances would be like, "Hey man, would you do a private party?" I'm like, "Sure. How much do you charge?" "Well, how much would you pay me?" You know, sometimes it was $25, sometimes it was $50.
Right.
All the free pizza you could drink, or eat, all the beer you could drink or pop. Right. You know, if they were younger kids' parties, whatever.
Right.
And that kind of grew. And then when I came home from the Marine Corps and started working downtown, I started as a bouncer before working my way up to bartending, and I would do both depending on the night. And then one night the DJ was sick and they needed somebody to DJ, and I said, "Well, I'm not familiar with the equipment, but I bet I can figure it out." So I went up and struggled my way through it. Thank God it was a dead night. But then when he came back, they were like, "Yeah, you need to teach Don how to run your equipment." So he had 2 record players and a dual cassette player thing that we each had its own input for headphones so you could cue stuff up. So it was pretty simple. There wasn't any... You weren't really trying to match beats or anything like that, and
like
you weren't
what I like to call the wiki.
Yeah, there was none of that.
Right.
So I'm not even like I know that music was around, but it was not.
Right.
There wasn't a ton of that. You know, I feel like the biggest hit at the time in this area, you know, in the bigger cities, I'm sure it was a huge popular thing.
Sure.
And maybe underground at the college, but at the clubs downtown, they weren't playing rap music. They weren't playing hip hop. They certainly weren't scratching, you know.
Right.
Like the only rap song they probably played was Ice Ice Baby. I mean,
right.
You know, it just wasn't that popular. I mean, well, and some of it probably was what they could get away with playing too.
Sure.
So, and then I didn't really do much with it for a long time. I mean, when I had the pet store, I still bought CDs. I collected CDs. I love music. I collected records.
Right.
You know, and I collected collector's versions of some of that stuff. I didn't really focus much on it until I met you. And then I have always loved singing. I sang in choir in high school. I sang in church.
Right.
I tried out for a couple of bands. A lot of the music that they wanted to play, though, was way out of my range.
Right.
Couldn't do it. And then when you and I started dating and you were running karaoke shows, I started going to karaoke shows with you. And I feel like
that was a hobby that turned into a job, because I love singing, and I've been involved in a lot of choirs and show choirs and things that way. And when I graduated with my master's and I started working for the university, I kind of had to figure out a new thing to do, because I couldn't go to the regular places downtown that I normally had gone to,
because your students would go there.
My students would go there, and all of a sudden now I'm a staff member, not another student, so I couldn't really go down there and hang out. And so I ended up getting involved in community theater, which is another side story, but an individual in that said, "Hey, they're doing karaoke at this place in North Liberty," which is a place I had never been to before, and I lived in North Liberty, on Thursday nights. And I was like, rock on. I live right up there. I love singing. Let's go. And so we made it kind of a thing where we were going every Thursday just to hang out and relax for a while. And I feel like within a couple months, the owners of that karaoke DJ company said to me, "You know, you're here every week and you know what you're doing and you can talk to a crowd. You want to do more shows and get paid for it?" And I went, "Well, yeah."
So I feel like we had been dating for several months before one night after a show, we were sitting in your living room playing different songs on the laptop and singing along.
Oh, yeah.
And then, I mean, it might have been 3 or 4 months.
At least. It was quite a while.
And then Long Black Train came on, and I started singing Long Black Train, and you went, "Oh my God, you're a bass."
Yes, because all the stuff you would sing was the 1980s rock.
Well, not all of it.
Most of it.
Yeah, most of it, not all of it.
Almost everybody in those are tenors. Like,
Yes,
they're not even baritone, they're tenors. Yes. And so you were singing along to it.
My voice would crack.
Your voice would crack, but you had a decent voice, and you clearly can hear tone. Like, you weren't tone deaf. And so I could tell, like, it wasn't really in your range, but I figured you were a baritone. And then, yeah, long black train, and you hit those bottom notes. And I'm like, you're not a baritone, you're a bass. That's a completely different thing. So then that opened up a whole new realm, because then I started pulling out a bunch of different songs. I'm like, do this one, do this one, do this one.
And so then I started going and helping you with shows.
Yep.
And then, yeah, when that company left, we started our own business. And
right.
We didn't just incorporate the karaoke into it. It was my DJ and music collecting hobby.
Yep.
And then even though I had bartended places, bartending was more of a hobby. I never really, I shouldn't say I didn't do it full time, because I did work 40 hours a week. But it wasn't, the majority of the places that I worked at, you were slinging beers and rum and coke and whiskey and coke and vodka and orange juice. You weren't
mixing drinks,
fancy mixology type drinks. That was a hobby.
Right. The mixology side was a hobby for you.
And then we incorporated that. We also incorporated me having been a bouncer and been in the military into our business.
Right.
Doing security for events.
Right.
So, and then you incorporated your event planning
for the wedding planning and other events. We have coordinated other events, and even some of the knowledge that I have of dancing, like polka dancing and show choir dancing. I have choreographed first dances for couples because they really wanted help with that. So we've done that as part of our wedding planning stuff.
And Star Entertainment is definitely a full-time job.
Yes, it is.
So in between the taping of part 1 and part 2 of this, when you were taking the puppies out, Joe had asked me, our AV guy, he's talked to a lot of people. A lot of people say taking a hobby and turning it into a job is the best thing I've ever done. Taking a hobby and turning it into a job is the worst mistake I ever made in my life.
Yeah.
So for me, it has always been the best thing. I mean, I'm sad about the pet store because I had to close it, but that was a life choice that I made. I couldn't take care of my kids and spend all that time there. But when I started doing the other things part-time, being the handyman part-time, Star Entertainment was part-time, working at the game store was part-time because there was a partner, I could work those things around my kids' schedule.
Right.
So if I needed to be at a school event, I could be at a school event. If I needed to take them to the doctor, I could take them to the doctor.
Right.
So for me, while yes, I wasn't making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year and building up this great retirement, I was paying my bills and I was there for my kids.
Right.
That was my number one concern.
Sure.
And without having a job where you had benefits like at the university or Procter & Gamble or something like that, where you had, a week of time off and a week of family time.
Right.
You had a week of vacation and a week for health and sick, and that grew the longer you were there. Right. I never worked at a place that had that kind of thing that I could build up.
Right.
Other than that short stint that I worked at the VA.
Sure.
And so it's what worked for me.
Right.
And I never got burnt out.
Right.
On any of them. And while my kids aren't perfect, my kids are pretty good kids and I was able to put them first.
Right. Right.
So that to me was the biggest component. I could see how it would be hard going from a job at the university where you have benefits and you've got your insurance paid to trying to turn DJing into a full-time job or trying to turn wedding planning into a full-time job. But I know people who have done it. I know somebody who was a elementary teacher in the Quad Cities, and she started out as a hobby taking pictures. She enjoyed it so much she started taking professional pictures for people. She started doing weddings. She turned it into a full-time job. She left teaching. I know another person that also was a teacher in the Quad Cities, and she loved baking. She loved baking so much she turned that into a full-time. Right. So she bakes cakes for weddings, she bakes cookies, cupcakes, all of that kind of stuff for different events for people.
Right. So. I think the question of, is it the best thing you could ever do or the worst thing you could ever do, turning your hobby into a job? I would say it's a double-edged sword. It's both. And it kind of depends on you as an individual, the hobby. There's a lot of factors that go into it, but I love the fact that a lot of my hobbies have turned into jobs, that my jobs feel fun all the time in that way. But at the same time, there are times that it's almost like you don't enjoy your hobby anymore because it's work. So there are times now, like when we have a free night, we don't go out to karaoke because we've been doing karaoke for work. So we rarely will go out ourselves to somebody else's show and do karaoke kind of idea just for fun, which I kind of miss to a certain extent. Because it's not just a fun night hanging out, doing karaoke for the night and talking with everybody. It feels weird if I go do that now that I'm used to running it, if that makes sense. So, and I do the same thing. We've talked about how, like at weddings or events, if they don't specifically want a day of coordinator or an event coordinator at the event, and they've just wanted one person there, that we need to send you, because if they send me, I can't not do the event coordinating side. Because I enjoy it so much, and that if something is happening and I see that things need to be done, I just automatically do them. So then it's hard to kind of separate that out and be like, I'm not getting paid to do that. That's not part of the job tonight. That's not what I'm supposed to be doing, and leaving that behind. So it's hard to kind of say that I enjoy that the hobbies have become jobs, that we're getting paid to do our hobbies, but at the same time, sometimes it does start to feel like work. And you kind of want to break from it, and then what do you do, because all of your hobbies are jobs, right? So
yeah, and I can see that to a certain point, but at the same token, I mean, when I worked at the VA, there were days when I dreaded going into work.
Oh, right.
So I think you're going to have that all the time.
Yeah.
The nice thing about our company is it's a different thing all the time. You know? So it's not 5 days a week, 8 hours a day doing the same thing.
No, right.
We do Name That Tune, we do karaoke, we do
right.
a private birthday party that was a different kind of music than I'm ever used to playing anywhere.
Right.
And then we'll do a wedding, and then we're having a corporate event.
Right. Right.
So
we did a 50th anniversary polka dance. Yeah. I mean,
right.
it's always a little bit different. And I agree with you. It reminds me too, like when our anniversary came around, and people were asking, well, what did you do for your anniversary? And I was like, we were here. We did our work. I mean, it's our hobby. We did our Name That Tune. We were doing our shows because that's what we enjoy doing. And they're like, but didn't you like take time off? This is a job. Didn't you go do something else? And I'm like, I think we might have stayed home and watched a movie one night. Like, that's what we do.
We ordered sushi.
Like, well, that's our off time, is now more what people think of. That's a downtime day. So.
And I have other hobbies that aren't
right.
jobs, and I know that they're hobbies because all I ever do is spend money. I don't ever make money doing them.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't say that I'm really good at doing them.
Right.
So. I still enjoy going and shooting. I mean, I'm a good shot. I don't go enough and keep it up.
Sure.
And then, I collect Star Wars
You
figures.
do collect Star Wars stuff. And maybe that's part of it. I don't have that many hobbies. I mean, my hobbies were kind of singing, music, that kind of stuff. And then in college, the other hobby that I really got into was events. And doing events, and so now it's really kind of incorporated into this job. My other hobby is playing with puppies, really.
Cooking used to be a hobby for me. I used to love creating new things, and that's part of the thing, is I don't really use recipes, and it's the same thing with bartending. Right. I like to create new drinks,
right? And
that gets expensive because you have to have so many different kinds of stuff to constantly be coming up with new blends of flavors, and the same with food. I mean, you have to have so many different spices and so many different things to go in with stuff. Right. So, and not every recipe that you try is a success.
No, that is true. I would say
those are still hobbies.
True. And I would say that the hobby that I have that has not really ever turned into a job, though it kind of is school. I mean, I have gone more years to school than most people.
Hey, honey, it's not a hobby.
But
it is 100. A hobby is the midpoint. If a job is over here and a hobby is here, school is over here.
Oh, what is that?
It's the opposite of making money. At a job, you make money. A hobby costs a little bit of money, but you get some enjoyment out of it.
I get enjoyment out of school. I get enjoyment out of learning new things.
I'm the only one who doesn't get enjoyment out of you going to school anymore.
Probably.
Like, I enjoyed it at first, like it was... Yeah, no. Now it's just money. Go on.
Oh, that's called a dissertation, honey. That's what that's called.
Yeah, that's the other thing. I never see you go anywhere.
No, because it's all
I just always
all
see
done
you
here.
sitting around all the time going, I'm working on school stuff.
I am working on school stuff. Yes, I'm sitting at a computer. I'm sitting on my tablet, and yes, I'm actually reading an article, and I'm working on school stuff, and it doesn't look like I'm doing anything all day long.
That's right. Laying in bed. Honey, are you going to get up and get dressed? I don't really need to. I thought you had schoolwork to do. That's what I'm doing.
I'm working on my schoolwork. That's right. It's more comfortable in bed.
So anyway, the point I was trying to make was, for me, it really worked because of the situation that I had with my kids.
Yeah.
You know, I had my kids at least 50% of the time, a lot of times more than 50% of the time. I'm the one that went to most of the school things. I'm the one that took them to the doctor, to the dentist, stayed home with them when they were sick. I tried working jobs. I tried working at Hy-Vee, and even though they say that they're, you know, family friendly,
Right.
you know, all I ever got was grief.
Right.
When I had to call in and say one of my kids is sick. In fact, I had several managers say, "Well, can't their moms watch them?" No,
Right.
their moms can't. It's my job. I'm the parent.
Right.
You know, it was very sexist, which was really odd to me because it wasn't that long ago.
Right.
But I ran into the same thing at the VA.
Right.
You know, I know women who were single parents who never had a problem getting time off. If I called in because my kids were sick, it was always a big hassle. And it, you know, you get to the point where it's just too much. And then on top of that, what I went through in dealing with RA when I was first diagnosed, and the medicines that they tried me on, I was sick for, you know, a year and a half and couldn't really work a full-time job at all.
Right.
It just made sense for me to be able to, you know, try and do that.
Yeah.
So.
And luckily, most of your hobbies are things that you could turn into jobs.
Yes.
So, yeah, that's great.
And even though some of them don't make a lot of money, they do make a little bit of money. Like the game store doesn't make a ton of money.
Right.
It pays for itself. It makes a little bit of money over the top, but not to where I could make a living.
No.
I mean, I'd have to put a lot more time into it.
Right.
So.
Right.
Thankfully, we have Star Entertainment. It's a hobby that makes money.
Yes.
Honestly, the game store is at this point.
Yes.
I don't do it enough.
It's not really a job.
Not anymore.
But it is. It's
still work. Yeah. I put a lot of time into it.
Yeah.
And
you say you don't have employees, but you do have employees because your kids will help. I help. So.
Yeah, but I don't pay you.
No. So it becomes a job for other people.
Yeah.
Is what your hobbies become work for others.
Right. Come help me with my hobby.
Uh-huh. That's what that is. That's why
they
I'm
get a
tired.
benefit out of it.
Do they?
Yeah.
I do?
I said they do.
Oh.
I didn't say you do.
Oh.
They do.
Okay.
Yes,
Well,
because
yeah,
there are new cards that come out. They play.
Yes,
and there
they
are new
play.
cards that come out, and they want those cards, and so.
Right. Right. So sometimes they can work to get a card or what
Yes.
have you. And even sometimes just seeing the new cards and being able to
Yes.
see them, put them together, that kind
So,
of stuff.
and a lot of times I'm working on that when, and honestly, for me it's a form of relaxation. When we're done with a show at the end of the night, or we have a night off,
Right.
and we're sitting down watching TV and relaxing, I don't
Right.
care if we start at 6 o'clock, you know, or we start at 8 o'clock.
Right.
I'll drag out a box of cards and start sorting them, and then pretty soon you're like, you want help with that?
Yes. Well, and part of that, the reason that I do that, though, and you know this, is that when I'm watching TV, I have a hard time doing nothing but watch TV.
Same here.
And so then if I don't have something else to do, I will eat, which is always a bad thing. And so I figure the cards are there. I might as well sort because it's kind of mindless. You don't really have to think about it.
Right.
And then, yeah. So
Which is why sometimes J comes before G.
yes. Well, yeah, because it's not 100% attention on the cards. But then the other side of it is there's something really satisfying too of having this stack and then finishing that stack and being done.
Right.
The down part of that is that Don always has more stacks hidden other places and finds them. And so then
Well,
he's
and
like,
new
well, if you're
sets.
done with that, you can do another
New
one.
sets come out every couple months.
Or you buy a whole lot of cards from somebody else
Right.
or something that way. And so
Yes.
the job is never done
Right.
ultimately, but I just have to remember that it's the individual stacks. And then if I can get that stack done, it's satisfying. And then I feel like I accomplished something that day because sometimes reading all the articles and not really having anything to show for it is
Well, the other thing
frustrating.
that sucks is, honestly, if I was going to have a store again,
Yeah.
right, the busiest times for a Magic or D&D store, a gaming store,
Right.
is Friday and Saturday night. What's the busiest time for a DJ, bartender, event,
Friday and Saturday
entertainment
nights.
company, Friday and Saturday night.
Yes.
I can't
Your
be at
hobbies
both places
conflict.
at the same time. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Your hobbies conflict.
So.
Yes.
All right. Well, I feel like we should probably wrap up from there. I think, to each their own on whether or not it's a good thing or a bad thing. For me, it was a great thing.
I think it's both. I think for most people, it's going to be both. There are times too, even now that like Star Entertainment, we kind of get burnt out on it. Even though we love doing it, we get burnt out on it. And then that's the point because we're so busy with it. And I think that's part of it. When it becomes to where it's no longer a fun job and it feels like work, then you're overworking. It's time to mix something up somehow, get another person involved, expand that company, do something different to make it so it's still fun for you. Because if it starts feeling like just the drudge of work, then you missed the point of changing your hobby into a job. That's my philosophy for today, my 2 cents. Or whatever.
Hopefully you enjoyed these 2 episodes. Check us out on all the socials. Until next time, have a good
week. We
hobby.
post every week.
Enjoy your hobby.
Yeah, enjoy your hobby, and we'll see you next time. That was a very awkward goodbye, but see you later.
It was.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.